When Amelia Morgan stepped into the sleek, glass-walled office building that brisk autumn evening, she carried more than just a lovingly packed dinner. She carried hope, excitement, and the gentle stirrings of new life in her belly. Each footstep echoed with resolve, a testament to her devotion to her husband, James. But never could she have imagined the dark secret hidden behind those polished doors. As she approached the office suite, Amelia's heart pounded with anticipation, unaware that everything she believed about her marriage was about to unravel. Little did she know the next few minutes would change her life forever. Amelia Morgan had always believed that love was meant to endure, no matter the challenges. She and James met in their junior year of college at the University of Chicago, where he studied finance, and she pursued a degree in journalism. From the outset, they appeared to complement each other perfectly. Amelia's vivacious yet compassionate spirit balanced James's ambitious and studious nature. When they married 3 years after graduation, many who attended the wedding commented that theirs was a union blessed by the heavens themselves. Over the years, Amelia watched James climb the corporate ladder at Highland and Brown Investment Group, heading to the office early and coming home late. His dedication eventually landed him the position of Chief Financial Strategist, an impressive title to be sure, but one that demanded an almost unimaginable level of commitment. While James was consumed with stock markets, client meetings, and late-night deadlines, Amelia turned to freelance journalism. She penned human interest stories, many of which got published in local newspapers like the Chicago Tribune. She didn't mind that her husband was busy. She took pride in being the supportive partner. Besides, she had her writing her circle of friends and a strong sense of independence. Their bond only grew stronger when Amelia found out she was pregnant. They had talked about having children in the future, but neither expected it to happen so soon. Still, James was overjoyed, or at least that was what he showed on the outside. He doted on Amelia in the early months, rearranging his work schedule to attend prenatal checkups and even reading parenting books at night. As Amelia's belly grew, so did her affection for James. She felt ready to evolve from just being his wife and confidant into the nurturing mother of his child. She believed their marriage would become even more solid and grounded. It never crossed her mind to doubt James's faithfulness. In the background, though, certain subtle changes took root. James started receiving an unusual number of late-night calls, which he would answer in hushed tones. He began taking business trips on short notice. More nights than not, James returned home after Amelia was asleep, offering half-baked excuses about urgent crises at work. Amelia, trusting by nature, didn't probe too deeply. She was busy writing an expansive piece for Chicago Monthly about local heroes making a difference in their communities. Then came the day she decided on a whim to surprise James with a home-cooked dinner at his office. She wanted to nourish him with both warmth and homemade goodness, to remind him that even in the chaos of corporate life, love awaited him. Late October's chilly wind greeted Amelia as she left their suburban home. With one hand resting protectively over her belly and the other clutching a thermal bag of steaming lasagna, she navigated her car toward the downtown area. The city lights twinkled in the distance like scattered stars that had fallen to earth. Amelia felt a gentle wave of hopefulness wash over her. She couldn't wait to see James's surprised, grateful expression when she showed up. After all, it was her thoughtful gestures that had drawn him to her back in college. A subdued sense of unease grew in her, though a product of the recent changes in his behavior. She scolded herself for being paranoid. James was a devoted man who had never given her any genuine reason to doubt him. Instead, she forced herself to think about the little fluttery movements of the baby inside her. She hummed softly to calm her nerves. A baby was on the way, and love needed to be at the forefront of her thoughts. Even so, a faint recollection surfaced. 2 nights prior, James had come home past midnight, reeking of expensive perfume that Amelia didn't recognize. She wanted to ask him about it, but he had immediately jumped into the shower, explaining that he and a colleague had spent the evening at a fancy restaurant with a client. She remembered hugging him afterwards and feeling a subtle distance, something intangible yet real, pushing those doubts aside yet again. Amelia parked her car in the visitors section of the underground lot, carefully grabbed the food and checked her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her cheeks were flushed from the walk in the cold, and her dark hair was slightly tousled. She smoothed down her coat, patted her bump, and took the elevator to the 26th floor. The reception area was surprisingly quiet for an early evening, with only a few lights illuminating the corridors. A new security guard, a tall, broad-shouldered man named Victor, glanced up and offered Amelia a polite smile when she walked past the lobby's main desk. She recognized him from a few earlier visits, but didn't know him well. He didn't try to stop her. He simply made a note of her arrival in the guest log. Amelia nodded in gratitude and continued noticing that none of James's usual co-workers seemed to be around. Highland and Brown Investment Group occupied 2 floors. The 26th floor housed the open-concept bullpen where mid-level analysts worked. The executive offices, including James's, were located a floor above. It was unusual not to see anyone else still working. Their departmental culture prized late-night research and all-hours deal-making. The hush unsettled her. She wondered if James had told everyone to leave early, or if there was a big off-site function tonight that she wasn't aware of. Perhaps James was all alone grappling with a final project or going over the numbers for a morning presentation. Amelia inhaled and reminded herself, "He's going to be thrilled when he sees you." Adjusting her grip on the thermal bag, Amelia took the elevator to the 27th floor. The doors opened to a corridor with marble floors, reflecting the gentle glow of track lighting. She walked down the hallway, her footsteps echoing. Each stride seemed to amplify her heartbeat until she was standing before the glass door, emblazoned with James's name, James Morgan, Chief Financial Strategist. She took another breath, steeling herself. The door was slightly ajar. That was odd. James usually locked it when he worked late to maintain privacy. She could hear muffled voices inside, though one voice in particular caught her attention, a woman's voice. Amelia's lips parted as a strange mixture of confusion and dread spread through her chest. Surely there had to be a reasonable explanation. Perhaps a co-worker was helping him with a last-minute project. Mustering her composure, Amelia turned the knob and walked in. Inside the office, the overhead lights were dimmed, replaced by the subtle glow of a floor lamp beside James's polished mahogany desk. Documents and binders were strewn across the surface. The smell of rose-scented perfume hit Amelia's nostrils. She froze for an instant, her eyes landing on a woman seated in the black leather executive chair. James's chair, which Amelia herself had gifted him on his birthday 2 years ago. The woman's presence was startling enough, but what made Amelia's heart lurch was the detail of her attire. She wore an emerald silk blouse and a form-fitting charcoal skirt that looked exactly like the set Amelia had hung in their bedroom closet a week ago, freshly laundered. Amelia felt rooted to the spot, her mind unable to process the betrayal playing out in front of her. Behind the woman stood James, one hand resting on her shoulder. His tie was undone shirt, partially unbuttoned, as though he'd hurried to dress just before Amelia walked in. He wore an expression of sheer panic eyes, darting between his pregnant wife and the woman in the chair. The lady turned around slowly, meeting Amelia's gaze with a smug, almost defiant air. Her name, as Amelia would soon learn, was Isabel Reed, a newly hired financial researcher who had become far more than just a co-worker to James. In that instant, Amelia's entire body quivered with shock and heartbreak. The thermal bag slipped from her grasp, falling to the floor with a muffled thud. It seemed symbolic, the shattering of her illusions about their marriage. Her lips formed a silent question. She couldn't bring herself to speak aloud. Her eyes darted to James, seeking an explanation, a denial, anything. James's face pale as moonlight seemed to register the catastrophic impact of the scene. He stammered her name, Amelia, as though that single word could rectify everything. Isabel rose with languid grace, letting Amelia's eyes wander over the outfit, Amelia's outfit, that the other woman wore so brazenly. James attempted to step forward, arms outstretched. Amelia instinctively recoiled, tears stinging her eyes. Her confusion morphed into fury. "How could you?" she demanded, her voice trembling with outrage. In an almost laughable cliché, James stammered, "It's not what it looks like." The statement seemed so ridiculous that Amelia nearly let out a bitter laugh. She could see perfectly well what it was. It was betrayal, cunning, and heartbreak, all condensed into this humiliating tableau. She might have dismissed suspicious signs before, but now there was no denying the reality. James's pregnant wife and the mistress in her clothes with the husband standing between them. This was no misunderstanding. Isabel, coldly elegant, even in that stolen blouse, leaned against the desk regarding Amelia through half-lidded eyes. "James," she said, her tone as smooth as glass, "I think it's time to tell her the truth." The audacity in her voice, the apparent lack of shame, sent a jolt through Amelia's core. Focusing on James, Amelia saw the glimmer of tears welling in his eyes. He reached a trembling hand toward her. "Amelia, listen," he pleaded, sounding on the verge of breaking. "I never meant for things to go this far." "What does that mean?" Amelia shot back. "How long has this been happening?" Isabel answered before James could. "About 6 months, give or take." Her response seemed deliberately pointed. Amelia's eyes flashed with rage, and she turned to James, expecting him to deny it. But James's gaze dropped to the floor, confirming Isabel's statement. 6 months. That meant James had been unfaithful almost from the beginning of Amelia's pregnancy. A wave of nausea overwhelmed Amelia, and she gripped the edge of the doorframe to steady herself. She felt an immediate protective instinct for the child inside her. James tried to close the distance between them, voice choking with desperation. "It was just a mistake. We had a couple of late nights at the office, and I was under a lot of stress. Isabel was there for me." He stumbled over his words as though he realized how empty they sounded. Amelia stared in disbelief, tears gathering in her eyes. "A mistake you've been repeating for half a year," she replied, voice trembling. "And you had the nerve to let her wear my clothes." James looked equally ashamed and panicked, seemingly at a loss for words. Isabel took it upon herself to speak again. "We didn't think you'd come here. James told me you were busy at home." Isabel's statement dripped with arrogance, as though Amelia's presence was the real inconvenience. At that moment, Amelia's entire body screamed for flight or confrontation. Her heart hammered. Her mind reeled, and she realized with heartbreaking clarity that the life she had envisioned was never as secure as she believed. Still with a baby on the way, She knew she couldn't afford to collapse. Summoning a strength she didn't know she possessed, Amelia steadied herself. She shot James a withering glare before locking eyes with Isabel. "You can keep the clothes," she said, her voice quivering. "They're ruined to me now." Amelia left the office in a rush, tears burning hot tracks down her cheeks. She fumbled with the elevator buttons, nearly dropping her phone as she tried to call a cab, her car keys trembling in her hand. Before she could even step inside the elevator, James sprinted out after her, calling her name repeatedly. She refused to turn around. In her mind, every step away from him felt like a measure of self-preservation. When she reached the underground parking lot, James was still trailing behind her, panting and breathless. "Amelia, wait. Please, we can talk this out." She spun, tears streaking her face. "Talk, I saw everything, James. What's left to discuss? You betrayed me, and our baby." She cupped her belly protectively. Her voice nearly broke on that final word. He tried again, voice trembling. "I'm so sorry. I swear I'll end it. I'll do anything. Please let me explain." But Amelia had no room for explanations. She felt physically ill, humiliated, and deeply wounded. Shaking her head, she got into her car. Her hands trembled so violently that it took 2 tries to start the engine. James placed a hand on the window, his eyes rimmed with tears. She turned away and drove off into the night, leaving him a lonely silhouette in her rearview mirror. By the time she reached their suburban home, Amelia's eyes were raw from crying. Inside the darkened living room, she sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. She could almost feel the baby stirring in response to her turmoil, reminding her that life continued within her, despite the upheaval. Part of her wanted to call her best friend Lauren Brown from Glendale, someone who'd always been her confidant since their middle school days. But she felt too raw, too ashamed to speak the words, "James is cheating on me." Eventually, she summoned the courage to dial. Lauren picked up on the second ring, her voice filled with concern. Without waiting for formalities, Amelia let the story pour out in a broken torrent. James, the late nights, Isabel's smug face, the stolen clothes. Lauren listened silently, and when Amelia finally paused, her friend spoke with a gentle but firm tone. "Get out of there, Amelia. You can't stay in that house alone with all these memories haunting you." "I can't just go." Amelia sniffled, wiping her nose with a tissue. "I'm pregnant." "Where would I go?" "You can stay with me," Lauren offered without hesitation. She lived about 2 hours away, but that distance might prove a safe haven. "Or if you want, I can come to you right now. You shouldn't be alone. This is too big to handle on your own, especially with the baby." Amelia, though grateful, hesitated. She wasn't sure of her next move. She just needed a night to think. "Let me see how I feel in the morning, okay?" she whispered. Lauren agreed to call again at sunrise, reminding Amelia that no matter what, she had a place to escape if she wanted it. Morning arrived all too soon, bringing with it a haze of heartache. A single ray of sunshine pierced through the partially drawn curtains of Amelia's bedroom. She stirred from a restless sleep, her pillow damp with tears. Her phone displayed multiple missed calls and texts, mostly from James. The first few messages were desperate apologies, peppered with declarations of love. Then came voice messages, some tearful, some pleading. Amelia listened to a single voicemail and found it too painful. In it, James's voice cracked as he begged her to come back, insisting that what happened was just a lapse in judgment. She deleted it midway. Lauren called promptly at 8 a.m. to check on her. Amelia's voice was steadier now, but her heart still felt as though it had been ripped in two. She had to decide on a course of action: stay in her marital home and face James' leave for a while to gather her thoughts, or move out entirely. Her phone beeped mid-call, a text from a number she didn't recognize. She glanced at it, and her heart pounded. "This is Isabel. We need to talk. James is just as much to blame as I am. He didn't tell you everything. It's not my fault entirely." Trembling, Amelia ended the call with Lauren. She stared at the text. The nerve of Isabel contacting her directly. Yet the message hinted there was more to the story than Amelia had witnessed last night. Did she even want to hear more? She decided to ignore Isabel for now. Talking to her seemed like the last thing Amelia wanted. James showed up at the house around midday, letting himself in with his key. Amelia was in the kitchen, forcing down a glass of water and some toast to stave off nausea. The moment she heard the door open, her chest tightened. Part of her wanted to bolt upstairs to avoid him, but she steadied herself, deciding to stand her ground. He entered, looking ragged, unshaven eyes bloodshot, his usually neat hair in disarray. "Amelia." He spoke softly. "I'm so sorry." "Don't come near me," she warned, stepping back. The cold fury in her gaze made him stop in his tracks. "I don't want to hear your apologies. You violated my trust, James. You wore me down with excuses and lies. And now I discover you've been cheating for half a year. Why?" He exhaled, shoulders sagging. "I can't make excuses. I messed up badly." He sunk into a kitchen chair, burying his face in his hands. Slowly he lifted his head, tears staining his cheeks. "I never set out to betray you. It happened little by little, one late night at a time. I felt stressed, overwhelmed at work. Isabel appeared as someone who understood, who listened." The tears in Amelia's eyes were replaced by hardened rage. "I listened to you. I was your wife, James. Do you realize the irony? I tried to support you, but you turned to another woman. Now you want me to comfort you because you feel guilty. It's more complicated than that," he mumbled, shaking his head. "You have to understand." "No, I don't." Amelia shouted, her voice echoing across the kitchen. She caught herself placing a protective hand on her stomach. The baby didn't need this stress. Lowering her voice, she added, "What else haven't you told me? Isabel said you were hiding more." James paled at the mention of Isabel's message. "She texted you?" he asked, voice quivering. Amelia only nodded curtly. James's eyes darted away in shame or fear. "I don't know what she told you, but whatever it is, it doesn't change how sorry I am." The conversation was draining. Amelia felt her head spinning. "I can't do this right now," she murmured. "I need space." His gaze latched onto her eyes, pleading. "Let me at least stay in the guest room. I can cook for you, help around the house. I don't want to leave you alone, especially with the baby." Amelia gave a mirthless laugh, tears welling anew. "You didn't think about the baby when you were with her. Don't pretend to care now." She took her coat from the rack and left the house, leaving James slumped in the kitchen. She needed air clarity, and perhaps a moment of solitude to keep herself from collapsing into a sobbing wreck. Instead of driving aimlessly, Amelia went to a small cafe near the local library, a place she often visited when searching for inspiration. The barista, a young man named Andy, recognized her and offered a friendly smile. She ordered chamomile tea, hoping it would soothe her frayed nerves. With her tea in hand, she settled into a cozy corner. The events of the past day blurred in her mind. Isabel's smug face, James's tearful pleas, her own heartbreak. The baby shifted in her womb, as if sensing her turmoil. She was about to cry when her phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. You deserve to know. Meet me at the Brewster Lounge tonight, 7 p.m. This is bigger than just an affair. Trust me. Amelia stared at the message, heart racing. Was she truly going to meet Isabel? The rational part of her screamed that this was insane. Yet the mention of this is bigger than just an affair. Intrigued her, stirring a sense of dread. She couldn't let James's mistress manipulate her. On the other hand, if there was more to learn, she deserved to know it. She typed a response. Fine. 7 p.m. The Brewster Lounge was an upscale bar perched on the 20th floor of a sleek high-rise, offering panoramic views of downtown Chicago's shimmering skyline. Amelia arrived 20 minutes early, her nerves in knots. She took a seat in one of the plush leather chairs near the window. The hostess offered a menu, but Amelia only asked for water with lemon, no appetite for anything else. At precisely 7 p.m., Isabel Reed sauntered in, exuding polished confidence in a form-fitting black dress. Her hair was pinned up elegantly, accentuating her sharp cheekbones. The memory of seeing this woman in her own clothes made Amelia's stomach turn. Isabel approached with a cool smirk sliding into the chair across from her. They locked eyes, tension crackling between them. You came, Isabel said, her voice low, as though they were partners in a dangerous secret. Cut to the chase, Amelia responded, her tone icy. Why am I here? Isabel flagged down a passing waiter, ordering a glass of Chardonnay for herself, before turning back to Amelia. Look, I know I hurt you. I don't expect forgiveness. I want to lay out the facts because there's a lot you don't know about James, some skeletons he's been hiding. Amelia's anger flared, but also her curiosity. She leaned in. I don't believe you. James and I have been together for years. I know everything about him. Isabel sipped her wine, eyes glittering. You know the man he wants you to see. But there's more. Ask him about the Hathaway scandal. Ask him why he really got promoted so quickly at Highland and Brown. Amelia frowned. The Hathaway scandal was a well-known fiasco in Chicago's corporate world, involving a construction magnate named Clint Hathaway, who allegedly bribed city officials. There was also talk of money laundering that had entangled a handful of bankers. Amelia remembered writing a short piece about it for the Chicago Tribune. What does James have to do with that? Isabel raised an eyebrow. Let's just say he helped clean up some tricky financial files to keep certain people out of jail. That's where Highland and Brown recognized his value. He made a few big names owe him favors. The revelation struck Amelia like a jolt. James had never mentioned involvement in the Hathaway scandal. Could Isabel be lying just to drive a wedge deeper? Yet her certainty had an unsettling ring of truth to it. Why should I believe you? Amelia said, voice slightly trembling. Isabel took another languid sip of wine. I have documents, copies of the ones James hid. He never wanted them to see the light of day. But I kept backups, for leverage. Her eyes flicked to Amelia's belly. He's probably not who you think. I'm not saying you owe me anything, but you deserve the entire truth before deciding what to do about your marriage. If you want the files, I can give them to you. A nauseous wave washed over Amelia. She swallowed hard, remembering James's panic and the nights he claimed to work so late at the office. The puzzle pieces were forming a darker picture of the man she loved. She stared at Isabel, who seemed to relish her power in this moment. "Why do you care if I know all of this? What's your angle?" Isabel's expression softened slightly. "James told me he'd leave you, but he never did. Then I found out you were pregnant, and he kept insisting it was a complication. I realized he wasn't going to fulfill his promises, so I want to burn down the fantasy he's living. If I can't have him, maybe I'll ruin him." Amelia felt revulsion for this woman, but also a grim fascination. This was more than a simple affair. It was a twisted web of blackmail, power plays, and half-truths. Suddenly, the baby kicked, as if urging Amelia to leave this toxic environment. "Send me the documents," Amelia finally said, not bothering to hide her disgust. She jotted down a burner email address she sometimes used for investigative journalism. "Use this." Isabel smirked carefully, pocketing the slip of paper. "By morning, you'll have them." She stood and smoothed her dress. "Just remember, James is a master at deception. If you think you know him, you're mistaken." With that, she left, leaving Amelia alone with a mind reeling from the horrifying possibilities. Amelia returned home around 9, physically exhausted and emotionally drained. James was waiting in the living room, pacing. When she entered, he rushed to her side. "Where were you?" "I was worried sick." She brushed past him, refusing to let him touch her. "Meeting Isabel," she said, tersely removing her coat. She watched his face go ashen. "She told me something about the Hathaway scandal." James's face crumpled. He dropped onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. "I was afraid she'd drag that into this," he mumbled. "It was a long time ago, Amelia. It was just one job. I had no idea how deep it went until it was too late." Her voice trembled with fury. "You never told me. You never even hinted. You were complicit in that fiasco. Do you realize people went to prison and you just walked away scot-free?" He sighed heavily, tears threatening to spill again. "I didn't launder money or anything. I was asked to restructure some accounts. I realized later it was hush money. Then Highland and Brown quietly promoted me because I kept my mouth shut. I was too scared and ambitious to blow the whistle. I rationalized it, telling myself I was protecting us." Amelia's mouth fell open in disbelief. "Protecting us? By getting tangled in illegal schemes? How am I supposed to trust a word you say now? You cheated on me for 6 months. You withheld your involvement in a huge scandal. What else is there?" James sprang up, reaching for her hands. She pulled away. He looked devastated. "Nothing else," he pleaded. "That's the whole story." She narrowed her eyes, remembering Isabel's warning that James was a master of deception. "I want you out," she said, her voice cold. "I need time to figure out what to do next. But I can't do it with you here lying to my face." James shook his head, panic lighting his eyes. "I won't leave you alone. You're pregnant. I want to be here for you. Now you want to be here." She scoffed. "Were you thinking about being there when you had your mistress draped in my clothes? Don't talk to me about caring. You lost that privilege. Take a hotel for a few nights. I'll let you know when or if you can come back." He protested, but Amelia's determined rage was a force he couldn't overcome. Eventually, he packed a small bag, tears staining his face, and left. When the door clicked shut, Amelia exhaled shakily, fighting a fresh wave of tears. She hadn't felt so alone in years. The next morning, Amelia woke to find multiple emails in her burner account from Isabel Reed. The subject line read, "The truth about James." She opened them with trembling fingers. Attached were dozens of PDF files, bank statements, incriminating correspondences, transactional records with suspicious transfers. Amelia's stomach twisted. It confirmed James had indeed been embroiled in the Hathaway scandal, albeit in a covert manner. Some emails even suggested James was aware that the money originated from illegal bribes. Reading through them, Amelia felt her faith in James unravel even further. He was not just an unfaithful husband, but also a man capable of playing a dangerous game in the corporate underbelly. Fear sprouted within her, fear for her future and for the babies. She also discovered a thread of messages between James and Isabel, spanning months. In them, James wrote about his frustrations with domestic life, blaming Amelia for being too focused on the pregnancy. He vented that he felt caged. It was a vile betrayal of what she had believed to be a loving relationship. Every word cut like a knife. The final email from Isabel read, "You see now. He doesn't deserve either of us. Do what you will with this information. I'm done." Numb. Amelia closed the laptop. The one person who might help her make sense of this chaos was Lauren. She quickly called her friend, voice shaky, as she recounted the new revelations. Lauren, furious on Amelia's behalf, insisted she move out for a while, at least until she decided what to do long term. After all, James had the money and resources to manipulate situations to his advantage. Amelia resisted, initially reluctant to leave behind the home she had worked so hard to build. But the weight of betrayal and uncertainty regarding her safety, emotionally and maybe even legally, convinced her to accept Lauren's offer. That afternoon, Amelia packed a few clothes, her laptop, and some essentials for prenatal care. She left a note for James, short and stern, "I need time and space. Do not contact me unless it's an emergency." She hopped into her car and began the 2-hour drive to Glendale, where Lauren lived. The road ahead felt symbolic of her internal journey, a path out of the life she once cherished and into an uncertain future. Arriving at Lauren's cozy bungalow, Amelia felt the weight on her chest ease a fraction. Lauren greeted her at the door with a warm, tight hug. "I'm here for you no matter what," she whispered, leading Amelia inside. The next few days passed in a blur of tears, anger, and heartache. Lauren proved to be a patient listener, letting Amelia cry it out multiple times a day. By the third day, Amelia finally mustered enough emotional energy to call her obstetrician, Dr. Victoria Lawson from Brooklyn, now practicing in Chicago, to explain the recent stress in her life. Dr. Lawson was sympathetic, advising her to prioritize her emotional well-being for the baby's sake. She offered to connect Amelia with a therapist who specialized in prenatal and postpartum mental health. Amelia agreed, feeling that maybe a professional could help her navigate this crisis. While at Lauren's, Amelia received daily calls from James, which she ignored except for one brief conversation. During that call, James apologized over and over, but offered no real solutions or acceptance of blame beyond, "I messed up." Amelia was done listening to half-hearted admissions. She hung up and refused to answer his calls thereafter. In the meantime, she contemplated her future. Could she raise the baby alone? Did she have the financial means to do so, considering that James was the primary breadwinner? As a freelance journalist, Amelia had some savings, but it wasn't substantial. She reached out to her older brother, Kyle Donovan, a private accountant in Minneapolis, for advice. After hearing the story, Kyle recommended a good divorce attorney if it came to that. He also cautioned her about the potential legal fallout from James's ties to the Hathaway scandal. If James's part in it is exposed, it might affect your assets and finances too, Kyle warned. Amelia felt her world tilt further. Should she keep quiet and try to preserve James's job for the sake of child support? Or should she blow the whistle to free herself from complicity in his crimes? Each option felt morally and practically complex. About a week into her stay at Lauren's, Amelia got a knock on the door. Lauren opened it to find James on the porch, a disheveled wreck. Despite Amelia's explicit instructions, he had tracked her down. "I just need to see her," James' pleaded voice cracking. Lauren, arms crossed, stated icily, "She doesn't want to talk to you." She began to close the door, but Amelia appeared behind her friend, recognizing that she couldn't avoid James forever. Stepping onto the porch, she quietly asked Lauren to give them a moment alone. Lauren shot her a concerned look, but reluctantly complied, leaving them on the doorstep. James looked at Amelia with sorrow-filled eyes. "I've been going crazy without you," he confessed. "I miss you and I'm terrified I've lost you for good." She stared at him, unsure if she felt pity, anger, or a complicated mixture of both. "I told you not to come," she said, softly but firmly. "I had to," he insisted, voice trembling. "I want to come clean, fully. Please, Amelia, give me a chance to explain everything." Amelia sighed. A part of her hated him. Yet another part remembered the early days of their love, the kind, thoughtful man he once seemed to be. She gestured toward a bench on the porch, and they sat down, a rigid distance between them. Haltingly, James confessed to how his affair with Isabel began. He admitted the relationship was initially physical, but soon became entangled in corporate secrets and blackmail. Isabel discovered the Hathaway documents, threatening to expose him if he didn't continue seeing her. Rather than risk losing his career and going to prison, James felt trapped, though. Amelia wondered if it was just an excuse. He recounted multiple near breakups with Isabel, but she always pulled him back with a new threat. At some point, the lines blurred between blackmail and genuine attraction, and he found himself seeking her company for comfort. Amelia listened in stunned silence. She clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms. "So you stayed with her because she was blackmailing you, and at the same time because you liked it," she said, voice dripping with bitterness. He nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I was weak. I was selfish. But you have to know I love you. I love our baby. I swear on my life I'll do anything to fix this." She closed her eyes, tears forming. "You can't fix what you destroyed so easily. I can't even look at you without remembering all the lies. And now I'm caught in the middle of your corporate crimes and your mistress's threats. Do you have any idea how unsafe I feel?" James nodded again, choking out. "I'll turn myself in. I'll confess everything. I just want you to feel safe. I'm willing to accept any punishment to have a chance with you and our child." Her eyes snapped open. She studied him carefully. Was he truly ready to risk it all just to make amends? Part of her found it hard to believe. Yet the raw desperation in his voice was compelling. "Let me think," Amelia finally said. "I'm meeting with a lawyer tomorrow. We'll see what happens." James started to protest, but she rose abruptly, cutting the conversation short. "Go home, James. You've done enough for one day." The next day, Amelia sat in a modest legal office with an attorney named Julia Thompson from Redwood City, who had a stellar reputation for handling high-conflict divorces and white-collar entanglements. Lauren accompanied her as moral support, sitting quietly in the waiting area. Amelia felt her nerves fray at the edges as she recounted James's infidelity, the Hathaway documents, and Isabel's blackmail. Julia listened intently, tapping notes into her laptop. After Amelia finished, Julia leaned back in her chair, lacing her fingers. "Your situation is complicated," she began, "but not without options. First, regarding the affair, that's grounds for a fault-based divorce in some states, but in Illinois, adultery doesn't necessarily grant a better settlement. However, it can influence spousal maintenance and custody decisions if there's evidence of harm or neglect." Amelia nodded, her stomach twisting. She dreaded the idea of custody battles, especially when the baby wasn't even born yet. As for the Hathaway scandal, Julia continued, "The risk is that if James is prosecuted, you may be under scrutiny too simply by virtue of being married. However, if you have no direct involvement, and we can prove you didn't benefit from his illegal activities other than standard living expenses, you had no reason to question you should be safe legally. Your bigger challenge is whether James's issues put your financial stability in jeopardy." Amelia swallowed hard. "What do you recommend?" Julia paused, choosing her words. "If you decide to divorce, we can file an immediate petition that includes spousal support and later child support. The court can freeze certain marital assets pending the resolution of James's legal situation. But if you think there's a chance of reconciliation, I suggest a post-nuptial agreement. It would protect you and your child from any legal and financial fallout. James would need to sign it willingly, effectively, separating your finances from any potential liabilities he faces." The notion of a post-nuptial agreement was new to Amelia. She mulled over it, exhaling a heavy breath. "I never wanted to handle my marriage like a business transaction," she whispered, tears gathering. Julia reached out a sympathetic hand. "I understand. But in crises like this, it's prudent to protect yourself and your child." That night, alone in the guest room at Lauren's house, Amelia couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling fan, spinning overhead, replaying Julia's advice. Divorce felt so final, so crushing, especially with a child involved. Could she truly imagine a future without James? But how could she stay married to a man who had lied so profoundly, who had found comfort in another woman's arms? Even if she found it in her heart to forgive, would the trust ever be the same? Then there was the matter of moral duty. Exposing James meant potentially saving others from corporate corruption. Yet that same act would jeopardize any child support or financial stability. It might even land James in jail. Was she willing to do that? Did she owe him any loyalty after what he'd done? She found herself sobbing again, feeling the baby kick. Softly she murmured to the child, "I'm sorry you have to go through this. I wish I could protect you from all of it." Eventually, she fell into a fitful sleep, haunted by nightmares of Isabel's smug grin and James's tear-streaked confessions. The following morning, Amelia called James, instructing him to meet her at a quiet lakeside park near Glendale. Surrounded by gentle waves and morning joggers, they sat down on a wooden bench. The crisp air carried the scent of pine. "I spoke to a lawyer," Amelia said, skipping pleasantries. "I have 2 conditions if there's any hope for us. 1, you sign a post-nuptial agreement that shields me and our child from any legal or financial fallout of your crimes. 2, you must turn yourself in or cooperate with the authorities regarding the Hathaway scandal. No more secrets." James's face tensed at her words. He chewed his lip anxiously before nodding. "I'll sign whatever you want. You have my word." His hands trembled, though, when he got to the second demand. "But do I really have to cooperate with the authorities?" Don't you realize what that could mean for me? For us? Amelia's expression hardened. You put your job and your reputation above our marriage for months. Now I'm putting our child's future and safety first. I refuse to be tied down by your deceit. The only path forward, if any, is total honesty. James looked as if he'd aged 10 years overnight. After a long pause, he nodded. All right, he whispered. I'll do it. I'll speak to the authorities. But you have to promise me something in return. If I do this, give me a chance to be a father to our child. Don't cut me out of their life. Amelia felt tears blur her vision. That depends on you, she said softly. How you handle yourself from this point forward will determine your role in our child's life. With that, she rose from the bench, leaving him with a swirling mixture of fear, hope, and desperation on his face. True to his word, James signed the post-nuptial agreement Julia Thompson prepared. A notary stamped it, and Amelia felt a rush of both relief and sadness. This was not how she ever imagined her marriage evolving, fortified by legal walls that separated her future from her husband's potential downfall. Within days, James arranged a confidential meeting with a federal investigator. Under counsel from his own attorney, James confessed his role in the Hathaway scandal. He provided the incriminating documents he had, though Isabel's additional files had already been stealthily uploaded onto a secure server at a news outlet. Amelia, having a journalist's instinct, had forwarded them anonymously to a contact at the Chicago Tribune, just in case James backtracked. James's confession triggered a quiet but intense investigation. Amelia was questioned briefly, but her minor involvement was deemed non-criminal. She felt relief tinged with heartbreak as she watched James step onto a precarious legal path that could end with his arrest. Weeks turned into months as the investigation churned on. Amelia remained with Lauren, although she occasionally allowed James to accompany her to doctor's appointments. She couldn't deny the child deserved a father. Moreover, James appeared contrite and determined to be present for the pregnancy. His legal case remained in limbo. He was out on bond, awaiting potential charges or a plea deal. Publicly, Highland and Brown placed him on administrative leave. Privately, they prepared to distance themselves from him if charges were filed. Despite the chaos, the day of Amelia's delivery arrived in a swirl of contractions and hospital corridors. James was there, racked with anxiety, but quietly supportive. Lauren stood by, too, holding Amelia's hand. After an arduous labor, Amelia gave birth to a healthy baby boy she named Oliver Morgan. The rush of maternal love overcame her tears streaming down her face as she held Oliver's tiny form against her chest. James hovered nearby, tears filling his eyes. For a moment, all the betrayal and secrets receded, replaced by the profound miracle of new life. Amelia watched him gently stroke the baby's cheek. She saw real love in his gaze, a tenderness that momentarily eclipsed her anger. Yet reality was never far behind. Over the next days, while Amelia recovered at Lauren's place with Oliver, James faced an onslaught of legal proceedings. The news broke about his involvement in the Hathaway scandal, causing a minor media sensation. James felt as though he was living on borrowed time, waiting for a final ruling. Isabel ironically seemed to vanish from the scene. Rumor had it she took a position at a different firm on the East Coast. The baby steps James took toward redemption were overshadowed by the looming threat of prison. 3 months after Oliver's birth, James reached a plea bargain with the authorities. His cooperation led to the exposure of bigger players in the scandal, and in exchange, James received a reduced sentence of supervised probation and substantial financial penalties. He avoided jail, but his career was effectively over, and his professional reputation was in tatters. During this time, Amelia remained cautious. The postnup protected her and Oliver from James's financial liabilities. She let James see the baby regularly, but she declined to move back in with him. She needed to see whether he could truly rebuild his life and earn her trust. Slowly, he took a lower-level accounting job in a small firm living in a modest apartment, dedicating any spare time to Oliver. His affair with Isabel was now just a stain on his conscience, a memory that haunted him. Over the following year, James proved consistent. He attended counseling, both individually and with Amelia, who agreed to couples therapy only because it might benefit Oliver to have two parents who at least communicated. Day by day, the bitter anger in Amelia's heart thawed into cautious acceptance. She never forgot the sight of Isabel in her chair wearing her clothes. She never completely forgave the lies or the humiliation. But she saw genuine remorse and the man's desire to be a father. Ultimately, whether Amelia and James would fully reconcile remained uncertain, even as Oliver celebrated his first birthday. Yet one thing was clear. The illusions that once defined their marriage had crumbled, replaced by a raw understanding of each other's flaws. Their story was no longer a fairy tale, but neither was it wholly tragic. Life has always marched forward full of complexities and second chances or final goodbyes. For Amelia, in those rare, quiet moments, she'd cradle Oliver and reflect on everything that had transpired. She'd recall that fateful night she brought dinner to James's office and found a mistress sitting in her place wearing her clothes. It was the moment that shattered her world, and ironically the moment that pushed her to find her own inner strength. She didn't know if she and James could ever rebuild their relationship from the ashes. Yet she did know one thing: she had emerged from the storm stronger, with a fierce determination to protect herself and her child. And that at least was a victory she could hold on to. Thank you for joining me on this emotional roller coaster of betrayal, blackmail, and unexpected resilience. Amelia's story reminds us that sometimes the deepest betrayals can become the crucible for our greatest growth. Despite her heartbreak, she found courage to stand up for herself, protect her child, and walk a path toward healing, even if it meant sacrificing the fantasy of a perfect marriage. Life rarely fits into neat little boxes, and neither do our relationships. Yet hope can still blossom in the ruins of trust, showing us that every ending carries the seed of a new beginning. If you found this dramatic journey compelling, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Help me bring more stories like Amelia's to life stories of love, loss, and the powerful will to overcome. Your support makes it all possible. Until next time, stay strong and keep believing in second chances.